The starship Relentless hung in the darkness of space, surrounded by the debris of what had once been a thriving colony. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, his gray eyes fixed on the viewscreen. He had not moved from that spot for over an hour. Behind him, his crew worked in silence. No one spoke unless they had to. The weight of what they had found pressed down on all of them, like a physical thing. "Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Park from her station at the communications console. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Command is requesting a status report." Jake did not turn around. "Tell them we have confirmed the casualty count. 2,847 dead. 340 of them were children." He paused. "Tell them we recovered the security footage from the schoolhouse." Amy's hands trembled slightly as she typed the message. She had seen the footage. Everyone on the ship had seen it. The images would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life. Commander Ben Torres, the ship's second-in-command, walked over to stand beside Jake. He was a big man, with broad shoulders and kind eyes. But those eyes held no kindness now. Only a cold, hard anger that he was struggling to control. "The Assembly has released a statement," Ben said quietly. "They express deep concern over the incident. They have called for an investigation." "An investigation?" Jake repeated. The word tasted bitter in his mouth. "The Velthari ambassador claims it was a mistake. He says their soldiers were given bad intelligence. He says they thought it was a military target." Jake finally turned to look at his friend. "Did you watch the footage, Ben?" "Yes, sir." "Then you saw them laughing. You heard them making jokes as they killed women and children. Does that look like a mistake to you?" There was nothing to say. "My sister was down there," Jake said. His voice did not break, but something in his eyes shifted. "Grace. She was a teacher at that school. She was 26 years old. She loved her students. She used to send me videos of their science projects." He turned back to the view screen. The footage shows her standing in front of her classroom door, with her arms spread wide, trying to protect them. She was still standing there when they shot her. The bridge was completely silent. "What do you think the Assembly will do?" Amy asked. "Nothing," Jake said. "They will issue statements. They will hold meetings. The Velthari will pay a fine. They might hand over a few low-ranking soldiers for trial. And in a year, everyone will have moved on to other concerns." He straightened his shoulders. "Everyone except us." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy waited for humanity's response. Some expected angry speeches at the Assembly. Others expected a military strike, a quick act of revenge that would satisfy human emotions and then fade away. The Velthari prepared for both possibilities. They increased security around their borders. Their ambassador practiced his apologies. But nothing happened. Humanity went quiet. There were no angry demands, no threats of war, no calls for justice. The human representative at the Assembly spoke politely and said very little. Human ships stayed within their own territory. Human diplomats smiled and talked about peace. The Velthari grew confused, then confident. Clearly, Elder Vorath had been wrong. The humans were weak, just as Ambassador Crix had said. They were afraid. They knew they could not win a fight against a major power like the Velthari Collective. Crix held a celebration in his personal quarters. "I told you they were nothing to fear," he said to his guests. "They bark like small animals, but they do not bite." He did not know that human intelligence agents had placed recording devices in his quarters months ago. He did not know that every word he spoke was being translated and analyzed in a secret facility deep beneath the surface of Earth. That facility was only one of many. Across human space, in underground bunkers and hidden research stations, the greatest minds of the species were working day and night. Military strategists studied every recorded Velthari battle from the last 1,000 years. They learned how Velthari commanders thought, how they made decisions, what mistakes they repeated. Scientists took apart captured Velthari technology piece by piece. They found weaknesses that the Velthari themselves did not know existed. Biologists studied Velthari physiology, looking for vulnerabilities. Economists mapped every trade route, every business relationship, every economic dependency that kept the Velthari collective functioning. Admiral Lisa Carter was placed in charge of the operation. She was young for her rank, only 42 years old, but she had earned her position through brilliance and determination. The United Earth Council gave her a simple order: make them an example. Make it so thorough that no species will ever consider harming a human again. Lisa gathered her staff in a secure briefing room. Holographic displays covered every wall, showing maps and data and intelligence reports. "We are not going to attack them," she said. "Not yet. When we move, it will not be in anger. Anger makes you sloppy. Anger makes you miss things." She pointed to a timeline on one of the displays. "We are going to take 6 months, maybe more. We are going to learn everything there is to know about the Velthari. Every strength, every weakness, every fear." "And then?" asked one of her officers. Lisa's expression did not change. "And then we are going to dismantle them. Not just their military, their economy, their society, their pride. We are going to make them an example that the galaxy will remember for 1,000 years." "Some might call that excessive," another officer said carefully. 340 children died screaming, while Velthari soldiers laughed, Lisa replied. "There is no such thing as excessive." Back on the Relentless, Jake Morrison received new orders. His ship would join a task force being assembled in secret. They would train. They would prepare. They would wait for the signal. On his desk sat a small holographic frame. It showed a young woman with brown hair and a warm smile, surrounded by happy children, holding up drawings they had made. Jake looked at that image every night before he slept. "I promise you, Grace," he whispered, "they will pay. Every single one of them. They will learn what it means to hurt us." In the Galactic Assembly, Elder Vorath watched the human representatives smile and nod politely at Ambassador Crix. The old Kethari felt a chill run down his spine. The humans were not afraid. They were not defeated. They were waiting. And when they finally moved, Vorath knew the galaxy would tremble. It started with small things. Things so small that the Velthari did not notice them at first. A cargo ship carrying nutrients for Velthari hatcheries disappeared near the outer trade routes. Not destroyed, just gone. 3 days later, its crew was found drifting in escape pods, alive but confused. They could not remember what had happened. Their ship was never found. Another cargo ship vanished the following week. Then another. Then 3 more. The Velthari Collective sent military vessels to investigate. They found nothing. No wreckage. No enemy ships. No explanation. Just empty space where valuable cargo had once been. Then the communications blackouts began. An entire Velthari colony world went dark for 6 hours. When their systems came back online, everything seemed normal. Nothing was damaged, nothing was missing. But the people were afraid. They did not understand what had happened. More blackouts followed. Sometimes they lasted minutes, sometimes hours. They hit military bases and civilian cities alike. Each time, nothing was destroyed. Each time, the Velthari found no evidence of how it had been done. Fear began to spread through the collective like a disease. Ambassador Crix demanded an emergency session at the Galactic Assembly. He pointed his sharp appendage at the human representative and shouted accusations. "The humans are behind this," Crix declared. "They are attacking our ships. They are disabling our communications. They must be stopped." Daniel Wright, the human ambassador, was a soft-spoken man with gray hair and gentle eyes. He listened to Crix's accusations with a patient expression. "Ambassador, I truly do not know what you are talking about," Daniel said when Crix finished. "Our fleet has been conducting routine training exercises near our own borders. We have full documentation of all ship movements. Would you like to see it?" The documentation was flawless. Every human ship accounted for. Every movement logged and verified. The assembly had no choice but to accept it. "Perhaps you have other enemies you are not aware of," Daniel suggested kindly. "The galaxy is a big place." Crix stormed out of the chamber, his mandibles clicking with fury. Elder Vorath watched him go, then turned to study Daniel Wright. The human ambassador caught his eye and smiled. It was a small smile, a polite smile. But Vorath had lived for 3,000 years. He knew what he was looking at. That smile was a warning. 3 months after the cargo ships began disappearing, the Velthari military held a celebration. It was the anniversary of a great victory from their past, and tradition demanded that it be marked with feasts and ceremonies. Every major military installation was decorated. Every officer wore their finest uniform. At midnight, every screen on every installation received the same message. It appeared without warning, without explanation. It was written in perfect Velthari language. "You killed our children. Did you think we would forget? Did you think we would forgive?" Before anyone could react, the lights went out. Not just on one base, on all of them. Every major Velthari military installation across the entire collective went dark at the same moment. Defense grids shut down, sensor arrays went blind, weapons platforms stopped responding, communication systems fell silent. The Velthari had never felt so helpless. They had never felt so afraid. In the darkness, they waited for the attack to come. They waited for their cities to burn, for their ships to be destroyed, for their people to die. But nothing happened. For 6 hours, nothing happened. Then, as suddenly as they had died, the systems came back online. Everything worked perfectly. Nothing was damaged. Nothing was missing. Except pride. Except the belief that the Velthari collective was untouchable. The humans had not fired a single weapon. They had not killed a single Velthari. They had simply reached into the heart of the collective and shown that they could do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. And then they had left, like ghosts in the night. Admiral Lisa Carter received the status report in her command center on Earth. Around her, technicians and officers monitored hundreds of screens showing data from across Velthari space. Phase 1 complete, her aide reported. All systems restored. No casualties. No evidence left behind. Lisa nodded. Good. Let them think about that for a while. Let them imagine what else we could have done. The fear will spread, her intelligence chief said. They will see enemies everywhere. They will trust nothing. That is the point, Lisa replied. We are not going to destroy them. We are going to destroy them with fear. They are going to tear themselves apart, wondering when we will strike again, and how, and where. She stood and walked to a large screen showing a map of Velthari space. Red dots marked their military installations, their economic centers, their government buildings. They thought they could kill our people and face no consequences, Lisa said. They thought we would rage and scream and then get over it. They do not understand us. They do not understand that we have been planning this since the day we found the bodies of those children. On the bridge of the Relentless, Captain Jake Morrison gathered his crew for a briefing. They had been training for months, preparing for this moment. Now it was time. We are moving into position, Jake told them. The Velthari are scared and confused. Their systems are compromised. Their leadership is panicking. That is exactly where we want them. What happens next, Captain? Asked Lieutenant Amy Park. Jake activated a holographic display. It showed the Velthari homeworld, a green and brown planet, surrounded by orbital defense stations. In 72 hours, we are going to pay them a visit, Jake said. We are not going to destroy their world. We are not going to kill millions of people. That is not who we are. But we are going to make sure they understand something very clearly. What is that, sir? Jake's gray eyes were hard as stone. That there is no place in this galaxy where they can hide from us. That every time they close their eyes, they will wonder if we are watching. That for the rest of their history, they will remember what happens when you harm humanity. He looked at each member of his crew in turn. They wanted to see what humans are capable of. We are going to show them. 37 human warships moved silently through space, hidden by technology the Velthari had never imagined. They slipped past sensor arrays that should have detected them. They avoided patrols that should have spotted them. They moved like shadows through the darkness between stars. The reckoning had begun. The Velthari homeworld was called Velth Prime. It was a large planet with deep oceans and thick forests, home to over 8 billion Velthari. Great cities rose along its coastlines, filled with towers that gleamed in the light of their twin suns. Orbital defense stations circled the planet like a ring of steel, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. None of it mattered. The human ships appeared without warning. One moment, the space around Velth Prime was empty. The next moment, 38 warships hung in the darkness, their weapons silent, but their presence impossible to ignore. The Velthari defense grid was still recovering from the blackout. Half their stations were operating at reduced power. Their sensor arrays were unreliable. Their commanders were confused and afraid. Before anyone could give an order, every screen on the planet flickered. Every communication device, every public display, every personal terminal showed the same face. Captain Jake Morrison looked down at the Velthari people from 1 million screens. 6 months ago, your soldiers attacked a colony called New Montana, he said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. They killed 2,847 of our people. 340 of them were children. He paused. In homes and offices across the planet, Velthari froze in place, watching and listening. Your soldiers thought they were attacking a military base. Perhaps that is true. Perhaps they were lied to. Perhaps they did not know. But when they discovered their mistake, they did not stop. We have the footage from the security cameras. We have recordings of your soldiers laughing as they killed women and children. We saw what they did. Jake's eyes seemed to look directly at each individual viewer. We are not here to negotiate. We are not here to accept your surrender. We are not here to destroy your world or kill your people. We are here to teach you a lesson that your species will never forget. The transmission ended. For a long moment, nothing happened. The Velthari waited, terror gripping their hearts, expecting fire to rain from the sky. Instead, thousands of small drones descended from the human ships. They fell like metal seeds, spreading across the capital city and beyond. The Velthari air defense systems tried to shoot them down, but they were too small, too fast, too many. The drones did not explode. They did not release poison or radiation. They simply landed on buildings, in parks, on streets and sidewalks, and then they activated. Light poured from each drone, forming holographic images that floated in the air. Faces, thousands of them. The Velthari saw men and women and children looking back at them. Under each face was a name and an age. Some of the faces were smiling. Some were serious. Some showed moments captured from everyday life, eating dinner, or playing games, or working in gardens. These were the dead of New Montana. The holograms covered the city. You could not walk down a street without seeing them. You could not look out a window without meeting their eyes. They hung in the air like ghosts, silent witnesses to what had been done. And then the drones began to play recordings. In public squares and shopping centers, the footage from the schoolhouse security cameras appeared. The Velthari heard their own soldiers speaking in their own language. They heard the jokes. They heard the laughter. They watched their own people murder children who were crying and begging for their lives. For 72 hours, the images and sounds filled the capital city. Velthari citizens who had known nothing about the attack were forced to confront the truth. They saw exactly what their military had done. They heard their soldiers admit that they knew these were civilians. They watched their commanders order the killing to continue anyway. The shame was overwhelming. But the humans were not finished. On the fourth day, human ground forces landed at the military academy where the soldiers who attacked New Montana had trained. They did not come with bombs or tanks. They came with lawyers and recorders and mountains of evidence. Every instructor at the academy was arrested. Every administrator who had approved the mission was taken into custody. Every officer who had helped plan the attack was placed in chains and brought before cameras that broadcast across the galaxy. The trials were held on neutral territory, supervised by representatives from a dozen species. They were not quick tribunals or military courts. They were full legal proceedings, with evidence presented and witnesses called, and every rule of law carefully followed. The galaxy watched as Velthari officials broke down under questioning. Their own records proved their guilt. Their own communications showed that they had known the target was civilian. Their own orders revealed that the mission was meant to send a message, to show other species what would happen if they resisted the collective. One by one, the guilty were convicted. One by one, they were sentenced. Not to death. The humans did not ask for death. They asked for something worse. The convicted were sentenced to spend the rest of their lives on memorial stations orbiting New Montana. They would maintain the graves. They would tend the gardens. Every day they would read the names of the dead aloud. Every night they would watch the footage of what they had done. They would remember until they died. But even that was not enough. The economic punishment began next. Every contract between Velthari companies and human businesses was cancelled. Every trade agreement was voided. Every scientific exchange was ended. Human diplomats met with their allies and explained what the Velthari had done. They showed them the footage. They shared the evidence. One by one, other species joined the embargo. The Torvan Empire, the Kethari Federation, the merchant guilds of the Outer Rim. Trade that the Velthari collective depended on dried up like water in a desert. Their economy began to collapse. Ambassador Crix came to the Galactic Assembly one final time. His shell-like skin had lost its shine. His mandibles hung loose with exhaustion. He no longer walked with pride. "This is too much," he said to Daniel Wright. "We have punished those responsible. We have paid compensation. We have apologized. What more do you want?" Daniel looked at him with those gentle eyes that hid something cold and hard beneath. "You killed our children, Ambassador. We want you to understand what that means. We want every species in this galaxy to understand what it means to harm humanity. This is not punishment. This is education." In his seat, Elder Vorath closed his 4 eyes and bowed his head. He had tried to warn them. No one had listened. Now they were learning. 5 years passed. The Velthari collective was not the same. It would never be the same again. Their military had been taken apart piece by piece. Treaties signed under pressure forced them to reduce their fleet to a fraction of its former size. Their weapons technology was frozen, forbidden from advancing, while human inspectors watched their research stations. The soldiers who had once walked with pride now kept their heads down, ashamed to wear their uniforms in public. Their economy had never recovered from the embargo. Trade that had once flowed freely now trickled through narrow channels controlled by other powers. Factories that had once employed millions sat empty and dark. Young Velthari left their homeworld in growing numbers, seeking better lives in other systems, where the name Velthari did not carry such shame. Their government had fallen 3 times. Each new administration promised to restore Velthari honor, but none of them could escape the shadow of what their predecessors had done. The footage of the massacre played in classrooms across the galaxy. Children of 100 species learned about New Montana and the price the Velthari had paid. But the humans were not finished. On the 5th anniversary of the massacre, a new structure appeared in orbit around the dead colony. It was a memorial station, built from metal that would last for thousands of years. Its design was simple but beautiful, a ring of polished steel surrounding a central chamber, open to the stars. Inside that chamber, inscribed on walls that would never fade, were the names of all 2,847 victims. Each name was accompanied by a small holographic portrait and a brief description of who they had been. Farmers and teachers, engineers and artists, real people with real lives that had been stolen from them. Representatives from every species in the Galactic Assembly were invited to attend the dedication ceremony. Most of them came. Even the Velthari sent a delegation, though they stood apart from the others, their heads bowed in shame. Admiral Lisa Carter stood at the center of the gathering. She had aged in the 5 years since the attack. Gray had appeared in her hair. Lines had formed around her eyes. But her voice was still strong, still steady, still carrying the weight of everything humanity had done and everything they had become. 5 years ago, the Velthari Collective thought they could attack us without consequence, she began. They thought we were soft. They thought we were weak. They thought we would rage for a moment and then forget. She gestured to the names inscribed on the walls around her. And we will never forgive. Her eyes swept across the assembled aliens. Tall Torvons with their feathered crests. Ancient Cathari with their silver scales. Clicking Velthari who could not meet her gaze. Dozens of other species, all watching, all listening. Let this memorial be a lesson to every species in this galaxy, Lisa said. You may be stronger than us. You may be older than us. You may have better technology or larger fleets or more powerful weapons. You may look at us and see soft bodies and short lives and think that we are not dangerous. She paused, letting the silence stretch. But if you harm our people, we will come for you. Not in anger. Anger fades. We will come for you with patience, with precision, with a determination that will span generations if necessary. We will not stop until justice is done. We will not rest until every guilty party has paid the price. And we will make sure the galaxy remembers. Her voice softened slightly. The universe is vast. There is room for all of us to live in peace. We want peace. We will work for peace. We will be good neighbors and faithful allies to those who treat us with respect. She straightened her shoulders. But understand this. The price of human blood is higher than you can imagine, and we always collect our debts. She stepped back from the podium. The ceremony continued with speeches from other human leaders, with prayers and poems and songs of remembrance. Flowers were placed at the memorial walls. Tears were shed by those who had lost loved ones. Through it all, Elder Vorath sat in his chair and watched. He had seen many things in his 3,000 years of life. He had witnessed empires rise and fall. He had watched species destroy themselves and others. He had seen cruelty and kindness, wisdom and foolishness, hope and despair. But he had never seen anything quite like humanity. When the ceremony ended, a young Torvon diplomat approached him. Her name was Selah, the same High Minister who had laughed at his warnings 5 years ago. She was not laughing now. Do you think the humans will ever truly forgive the Velthari? She asked. Vorath watched the human delegates as they moved through the crowd. They smiled and shook hands, and spoke politely to everyone they met. They seemed friendly. They seemed kind. They seemed like exactly the soft creatures that Ambassador Crix had once mocked. But Vorath knew better. No, he said simply. That is what makes them so terrifying. And that is what will make them the most powerful force in this galaxy. Sayla looked surprised. Their power comes from not forgiving? Vorath nodded slowly. Other species fight wars and then make peace. But humanity will hold on to their anger. That will be their greatest strength. They conquer enemies and then absorb them. They win or lose and then move on. Time heals their wounds. Generations pass and old hatreds fade. He gestured toward the humans. Not them. They remember. They teach their children to remember. A wrong done to them 1,000 years ago is still a wrong that must be answered. He turned to face her directly. Tell me, young one, if you knew that your grandchildren's grandchildren would still be paying for a mistake you made today, would you make that mistake? Sayla was silent for a long moment. No, she finally admitted. I would not. Neither will anyone else, Vorath said. That is humanity's true weapon, not their ships or their technology or their determination. It is the certainty that they will never stop, that they will never forget, that crossing them means your entire species will carry that burden forever. He rose from his chair, his old joints creaking with the effort. I warned them 5 years ago. No one listened. Perhaps now they understand. Humans are not to be trifled with, not because they are the strongest, not because they are the smartest, but because they are the ones who never, ever let go. Captain Jake Morrison stood alone at the memorial wall, looking at the name of his sister, Grace Morrison, teacher, 26 years old, loved by all who knew her. He had kept his promise. The Velthari had paid. Justice had been done. But the pain in his heart had not faded. It would never fade. That was the human way. Rest well, Grace, he whispered. We will never forget you. None of them will ever forget you. Outside the station, the stars burned cold and bright. The galaxy stretched on, forever in every direction, filled with 1,000 species and 1,000,000 worlds. And somewhere out there, every one of those species now knew the truth. Humans did not forgive. Humans never forgot. And if you were foolish enough to hurt them, they would make sure you remembered that lesson for the rest of your history. The memorial station would orbit New Montana for 10,000 years. The names of the dead would remain illuminated. The lesson would be taught to every generation that came after. Humanity remembered. Humanity would always remember. The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly was filled with noise and movement. Representatives from 47 different species had gathered on the space station orbiting the planet Thessar Prime. They came from all corners of the known galaxy, each one speaking for billions of their own kind. Today, they would decide something important. A new species wanted to join the assembly. They called themselves humans. Elder Vorath sat in his ancient chair and watched the others talk. He was a Cathari, a species known for living very long lives. Vorath himself had seen more than 3,000 cycles pass. His scaled skin had turned from deep green to pale silver over the centuries. His 4 eyes had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. He had seen wars that burned across entire star systems. He had watched species destroy themselves with their own pride. Now, as he listened to the younger representatives laugh and joke about the humans, a cold feeling settled in his stomach. Look at their data, said Ambassador Crix of the Velthari Collective. He was a tall creature with hard shell-like skin and clicking mandibles. They live barely 100 cycles. Their bodies are soft. They have no natural weapons, no claws, no armor, Their homeworld is small and wet. Their fleet is modest at best. They seem harmless enough, agreed High Minister Selah of the Torvan Empire. Her feathered crest rose and fell as she spoke. Perhaps even useful. They are creative, I have heard, good at building things. More laughter filled the chamber. The humans were seen as a curiosity, nothing more, a young species taking its first steps into the wider galaxy. Cute, perhaps, interesting, but certainly not dangerous. Elder Vorath rose slowly from his seat. The movement was difficult for him now. His joints ached with age, but his voice remained strong. I must speak, he said. The chamber grew quiet. When an elder spoke, others listened. It was tradition. It was respect for those who had seen more than anyone else alive. I have watched many species join this assembly, Vorath began. I have seen the dominion of Zerath rise to power and then burn 1,000 worlds before they were stopped. I witnessed the Hollow Wars that killed trillions. I remember the silent plague that erased the Morthani from existence. He paused, letting his words settle over the crowd. But I tell you now, with all the certainty my years have given me, do not provoke the humans. Ambassador Crix made a sound that was his species' version of a laugh. You cannot be serious, Elder. These creatures are weak. What could they possibly do to concern us? It is not their strength that should concern you. It is their memory. Their memory? Selah asked, confused. Vorath nodded slowly. I have studied many species. I have learned how they think, how they feel, how they respond to conflict. Most species conquer for resources, for territory, for power. When they win a war, they take what they want and move on. When they lose, they accept their defeat and rebuild. Time heals their wounds. Generations pass and old hatreds fade. He pointed one thin finger toward the section where the human representative sat quietly watching. Humans are different, Vorath continued. They do not forget. They do not forgive. Strike them once, and they will spend generations ensuring you pay for it. Not just your leaders, not just your soldiers. They will make certain your children's children know the price of harming humanity. The chamber was silent now. Some of the representatives looked uncomfortable. Others still seemed amused. I have read their history, Vorath said. On their own world, before they reached the stars, they fought many wars among themselves. In one conflict, a nation was defeated and humiliated. The other nations thought the matter was settled. 20 cycles later, that same nation rose again and started a war that killed millions. They did not forget their humiliation. They nursed their anger until it exploded. He looked directly at Ambassador Crix. In another time, a small group of humans was wronged by a powerful empire. The empire laughed at them, thinking them too weak to matter. But those humans waited. They gathered strength. They made alliances, and decades later, they destroyed that empire completely. They did not forget. They did not forgive. Crix waved one of his many arms in dismissal. Ancient history, from a primitive world. They have joined the galactic community now. They will learn civilized ways. No, Vorath said firmly, you do not understand. This is not a flaw in their character that civilization will remove. This is who they are. It is written in their very blood. They form bonds with each other that run deeper than anything I have seen in other species. When you hurt one human, you hurt them all, and they will make you pay. Not in anger, for anger fades. They will make you pay with cold, patient determination that can last for centuries. You are trying to frighten us with stories, Crix said. The Velthari collective fears nothing, certainly not these soft creatures. Vorath sat down slowly. His old bones creaked. His heart felt heavy. I have given my warning, he said quietly. I have done what I can. When the time comes when you have awakened something you cannot stop, remember that I tried to save you. Remember that I told you the truth, and you chose to laugh. The assembly voted to accept humanity into their ranks. It was a routine matter, decided quickly. The human representative thanked them politely and promised peaceful cooperation. Everyone went back to their normal business. 6 months passed. On a frontier world called New Montana, human colonists were building a new life. It was a beautiful planet with wide open plains and clear blue skies. Families had come there to farm, to raise children, to find a fresh start far from the crowded cities of Earth. There was a school in the main settlement. 340 children attended classes there, learning about math and science and the history of their species. Their teacher, a young woman named Grace, loved her job. She loved watching the children grow and learn and dream about the future. On a quiet Tuesday morning, Velthari raiders dropped from the sky. They came without mercy. The Velthari soldiers had been told this was a military outpost. They had been told the humans here were soldiers, not families. Perhaps it was a mistake. Perhaps it was a lie. Perhaps they simply did not care. When it was over, 2,847 humans lay dead. Among them were Grace and all 340 of her students. The security cameras recorded everything. They recorded the screams. They recorded the Velthari soldiers laughing as they did their work, thinking no one would ever know. But someone would know. Everyone would know. And humanity would never ever forget.